Although some parts of Central Asia were conquered by the Rashidun, Umayyad, and Abbasid caliphates, most of the region remained outside the control of the caliphate. The reason for this was that besides the fertile Farghana Valley region, most of Central Asia consisted of vast steppes and deserts and was inhabited by nomadic tribes. Therefore, instead of conquest, these regions were exposed to Islam through preachers, merchants, and Sufis. The Abbasid minister and preacher known as Ahmed bin Fadlan had a major role in spreading Islam in Central Asia. Ahmed bin Fadlan was sent to various nomadic tribes in Central Asia on behalf of the Abbasid government in order to preach Islam to the tribes and establish relations with various small Turkic states. On one occasion, the ruler of the Karakhanid state, known as Satuk Bughra Khan, embraced Islam after having a discussion with Ahmed bin Fadlan. As a result, thousands of Turks within the Karakhanid state became Muslims, and the Karakhanids established trade relations with the Abbasid Caliphate. After converting to Islam, the Karakhanids preached Islam to various other Turkic tribes such as the Oghuz Turks and the Uyghurs, and the Muslim population of Central Asia increased. Islam continued to spread in Central Asia through Sufi preachers such as Ahmed Yasavi, who played a major role in spreading Islam among the tribes of the region. Throughout the reign of the Abbasid Caliphate, many Central Asian Turks migrated to the Abbasid cities and rose to high positions within the government. During this period, the Abbasid Caliphate also produced many Turkic scholars and scientists such as Sadr al-Sharia al-Asghar, who wrote books on astronomy, Abu Abbas al-Farghani, who wrote books on geography, and Abu Nasr Ismail ibn Hammad al-Jawhari, who wrote an Arabic dictionary containing 40,000 words and their meanings. However, although many Turks from Central Asia migrated to the Abbasid Caliphate, some Muslim Turks preferred to stay in their lands and continued to live a nomadic lifestyle. One of these Turks was the Islamic scholar known as Mahmud al-Kashgari, who called on Turks not to abandon their nomadic lifestyle. He stated, "Just as the effectiveness of a warrior is diminished when his sword begins to rust, so too does the flesh of a Turk begin to rot when he assumes the lifestyle of a Persian." Because the Turks of Central Asia lived tough and nomadic lives, this made them great warriors. The great fighting abilities of the Turks would later make the region of Central Asia a more integral part of the Muslim world after the collapse of the Abbasid Caliphate, when Turks managed to create powerful Muslim states such as the Ghaznavid, Seljuk, and Khwarizm empires. During this period, Central Asian cities such as Samarkand, Bukhara, Tabriz, Khwarizm, and Nisa became centers of science, and Central Asia produced many great scholars such as Abu Nasr al-Farabi, who wrote books on philosophy, medicine, and mathematics. The last major Islamic Central Asian empire during this period was the Khwarizm Empire, which collapsed in 1231 after the Mongol invasions led by Genghis Khan. During this period, a major Islamic reformer emerged in Central Asia, known as Bahaudin Nakshaband. Bahaudin was a preacher who memorized the Quran and mastered the Chagatai and Persian languages. which allowed him to gain a following among both Turks and Persians in Central Asia. After the Mongol invasions that swept through Central Asia, there was a need for Islamic reform in the region. This need was filled by Bahaudin Nakshaband. Bahaudin initially worked as a scholar in the government of the Chagatai Khanate. However, he abandoned politics after he was asked to carry out an execution. Bahaudin was given a sword to carry out the execution, but he put the sword down and refused to kill the man that was sentenced to death. After this, Bahaudin Nakshaband abandoned politics and dedicated himself to teaching the common people. He called on people to reject luxury and greed and distance themselves from the rulers. Bahaudin and his followers conducted voluntary work such as repairing roads, cleaning mosques, distributing food to the poor, and providing medical treatment to the sick. He stated, "Busy your heart with the remembrance of God and busy your hands with work." The followers of Bahaudin Nakshaband became known as the Nakshabandis. Because of the popularity of Bahaudin Nakshaband, many people left traditional Islamic schools and joined his learning circles. This angered the state, and many of his followers were persecuted and even killed. In the decades that followed, the Nakshabandi Sufi order played a major role in resisting tyranny in Central Asia, as the region continued to be conquered by brutal leaders such as Timur. Throughout the mid-14th century, Timur slaughtered and pillaged Central Asia and established his own empire, making the city of Samarkand his capital. Although he was tyrannical, Timur invested in scholars and constructed many great pieces of architecture. However, he filled his government with people who blindly praised him, and he favored his fellow Chagatai Turks over all other people living in Central Asia. As a result, his reign created divisions and hatred between Turks and Persians in Central Asia. For example, during the reign of the Timurid Empire, the scholar known as Ali Shir Navai wrote a book known as Muhakamat al-Lughatain, in which he mocks the Persian language and praises the Chagatai Turkic language. Timur's tyrannical rule also caused many Persian scholars to flee his empire, such as Mir Sayyid Ali Hamadani, who fled to Kashmir after being threatened with execution. The Timurid Empire collapsed in the year 1507 and was succeeded by various khanates such as the Khanate of Bukhara. During this period, Islamic unity was restored in Central Asia and many Persians were once again included in the government. In the centuries that followed, these small Central Asian states began to face invasions from the rising Russian Empire. Despite fierce resistance from tribes and states, the Russians eventually conquered the region of Central Asia in 1895. The domination of Central Asian Muslims by Christians affected the morale of the Muslims of the region. However, during this period, many Muslims attempted to revive Islam in Central Asia and reconnect with the Muslim world which they had been cut off from. For example, the Tatar Muslim scholar known as Riyazuddin bin Fakhruddin translated the works of Imam al-Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah into the Tatar language. At the same time, an Uzbek Islamic scholar known as Munawwar Qari Abdul Rashid Khan opened many Islamic schools in Tashkent, which taught both modern and Islamic education. Other Central Asian Muslims tried to make more radical attempts at Islamic revival. For example, in 1897, the Tatar Islamic scholar known as Abdul Rashid Ibrahim left the Russian Empire and visited the Ottoman Empire to try and create an anti-Russian Muslim rebel group. However, Abdul Rashid Ibrahim was eventually expelled from the Ottoman Empire due to Russian pressure and took refuge in Japan. In the year 1917, Islam in Central Asia became even more repressed after the Soviet Union came to power in the Communist Revolution. The communist government viewed Islam with hostility and tried to promote atheism and materialism in Central Asia. The Soviets tried to replace the region's Islamic identity with ethnic identities, and they created artificial provinces such as Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, which had never existed before. However, the Muslims of Central Asia resisted these policies and called for Islamic unity. The Soviets executed anyone who tried to create Islamic revival in the region. In 1925, the Tajik Muslim scholar known as Muhammad Sultan al-Khojandi was sentenced to death by the Soviet government after he publicly debated atheists. However, Sultan al-Khojandi managed to escape prison before the execution was carried out, and he fled to China. He then traveled through India and Persia until he finally reached the holy city of Mecca in Hijaz, where he spent the rest of his life teaching and writing books on Islam. In 1931, the Soviets executed the Kazakh Imam known as Shakarim Khudai Berduli after he published books criticizing socialism. In 1938, Abdul Rauf Fitrat, who was an Uzbek professor at Samarkand University, was executed after he gave lectures criticizing communism. Anyone else who tried to reconnect Central Asia with the Muslim world was also killed. For example, the Tatar Muslim diplomat known as Karim Abdul Raufovich Kakimov tried to establish strong Soviet relations with Muslim countries such as Saudi Arabia. As a result, he was executed in 1938. Central Asia was eventually liberated from Russian rule in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, the region inherited the legacy of artificial borders and identities created by the Russians.